Here's a question for you. How is buying a condo similar to buying a used vehicle? The answer is that in both situations, it's crucial to check under the hood. Just as it's vital to check under the hood when buying a used vehicle, it's equally as important to look beneath what I call the condo hood, which is the condo association. Hello, and welcome to the All About Condos channel, your go-to source for all things related to condos, brought to you by Ickbens International Realty. I'm Octavio Rueda, your host and personal condo consultant, here to guide you effortlessly through the challenges of buying and owning a condo. During the purchasing process, it is essential to be vigilant for potential red flags when viewing condos. Don't just get lured on how the condo looks inside, the size of the bedrooms, kitchens, or baths. Yes, location of the condo, its features, amenities, and price points are important. But the real game changer is to look a little deeper, to delve into what I call looking under the condo hood, especially if you're considering making an offer. In this video, we're going to explore some unique insights and practical tools that will help you make the best decision when buying a condo. Insights that you might not easily find elsewhere. I'll guide you through in-depth analysis, asking the right questions and understanding the subtleties of purchasing a condo. In my Buying a Condo Like a Pro video, I only briefly touch on this topic, but it's an essential aspect of the buying process. So I decided to create this video to delve deeper into this subject. Before we get started, I want to bring to your attention two key points. First, every purchase situation is unique, and the insights and questions I'll share are not exhaustive, so consider them as starting points. And second, the issues I mentioned may not necessarily be deal breakers. There could be mitigating circumstances or workarounds to resolve or address any particular issue. However, if these issues do exist within the condo community, it's important to understand their implications before making a commitment. This understanding will allow you to make an informed decision about whether the condo community is a good fit for you or if the issues can be addressed or managed. Now, let's get started. Let's start with something your real estate agent can do for you, ensuring that the sales activity in the condominium is healthy. By healthy, I mean that the current number of sales transactions and the sales price trend should be consistent with the past 2 years or 3. If there are any unexplained spikes in the number of sales transactions or a downward trend in the listing or sales prices that cannot be accounted for by the current state of the real estate market, it's worth investigating the situation. A surge in sales or the decreasing trend in the sales price can be a clear red flag, possibly indicating serious issues within the condominium. The association's website is something you can easily check from home. See if the association maintains a website. Believe it or not, this simple check can reveal a lot about an association, especially in Florida, where condominium associations with 150 or more units are legally required to have a website. Furthermore, even if it's not mandated by law, setting up a website is relatively easy and enables associations to provide essential services to their members and residents more efficiently. So in my view, an association without a website may seem outdated or old school, and dealing with such associations may be a slow and tedious process. If the association doesn't have a website, then it's vital to verify if the association publishes a digital or hard copy newsletter, and during your property visit, verify if it maintains a community bulletin board near their mailboxes or in the common areas. I'd also like to emphasize that condo associations without websites should ideally publish newsletters. Newsletters are an effective way to keep unit owners informed about significant developments within the community. However, not all condo associations maintain newsletters because it requires time and dedicated effort by one or two individuals. This is understandable, particularly in smaller associations. In my opinion, it's easier for associations to have a website than a newsletter. Be that as it may, if an association doesn't have a website or a newsletter, it might be a sign that the board of directors or the management company isn't taking the necessary measures to keep the members and residents informed. If the condo you're considering has a website or a newsletter for residents or members, make sure you see what's been published. Reading the website articles or newsletters can provide valuable insights into the association and I highly recommend it. To gain insight into the community dynamics, if possible, visit the property at different times and on various days of the week. I recommend visiting during the late afternoon when residents are returning from work. This allows you to observe the traffic flow in and out of the property. And also consider a Saturday evening visit to catch a glimpse of the social activities that take place. When at the property, one of the first things to look for is the obvious, the observable aspects like the building facade, its overall condition and maintenance, including the common areas and the landscaping, if any. I once managed a high-rise condominium in Hollywood, Florida, situated next to the ocean, where the average unit sold for about $500,000. The listing agents advertised the building as having security service. However, in reality, it was simply a front desk concierge monitoring outdated surveillance cameras. If security service is listed as an amenity, unless you see a uniformed security guard on the premises, make sure you inquire about the security services. It's critical to verify the level of security provided, as the term security service can be misleading. It may not necessarily imply the presence of a uniformed security guard or a state-of-the-art surveillance system. It's also important to determine if the service includes a roving guard that patrols the building or property, or one that is stationary, as in a guardhouse at the entrance of the building or community. Security guard services are essential, except in cases where logistical or financial circumstances prevent it, such as those faced by small condo associations. I firmly believe that all condo associations should offer professional security service. This could be, at the very least, on a part-time basis, such as from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. One last point about the on-site visit before we move on is checking the association's use of the community bulletin board. Bulletin boards that are empty or display outdated notices can also be a red flag. Maintaining a bulletin board with updated notices is crucial, especially in Florida, where the law mandates associations to post all official notices on bulletin boards for their owners and residents to see. Here in Florida, once a notice is posted within the required time frame, owners have been given official and legal notice and cannot claim they were not aware of it. Important information such as board meeting dates, administrative changes, and special projects should be regularly updated on the bulletin boards. Be on the lookout for common violations. Frequent violations of rules and regulations in a condominium community indicate lax enforcement, a red flag for two reasons. One, it affects the residents' quality of life, and two, it can often reflect lax enforcement of collection efforts for delinquent assessments. An association that can't enforce its rules and regulations is unlikely to enforce its collection policies effectively. This can lead to issues such as unpaid assessments, negatively impacting the overall financial health of the association and consequently the maintenance of the building and services to unit owners. Therefore, it's vital to be aware of the rule enforcement when evaluating a condominium or community. By the way, you don't need to know all the rules and regulations of a condominium to know how to spot most violations. There are many rules and regulations which are common sense and universal, meaning they apply to all condominiums regardless of the state where the property is located. It's safe to say that no condominium association permits activities that negatively impact the aesthetics or value of the property or impede a unit owner's right to peaceful enjoyment of their property. For instance, unit owners can't modify the building's facade, paint the balcony any color they want, operate a retail business out of their unit, or use the unit in any way that is unlawful. These are significant issues and probably not allowed in any condo association. However, there are more subtle, less obvious violations that are universal. For example, typically, it's not allowed to use the balconies as a storage area or for drying clothes in any condominium, in this country anyways. As a condo association manager, one of my biggest pet peeves was the owner's misuse of balconies. I would tell my residents that the balcony should look like an extension of the living room, not a storage closet. Another pet peeve is when owners use common areas as they are private property. For instance, unit owners who keep personal items outside their doorway, in the hallway or outside of their unit, especially when the unit is located on the ground floor. These actions can lead to an unsightly and cluttered appearance, particularly when not maintained regularly. Suppose you've now spent 4 to 6 weeks into this condo shopping process, visiting 3 or 4 condos per week. You finally find the condo that best suits your needs, or even better, your dream condo. Before making an offer, it's essential to find out the answers to the following questions, which can provide insight into the financial and administrative condition of the association. Does the association have a reserve fund? This is a question that lending institutions will ask if you're applying for a mortgage. The existence of a reserve fund is crucial as it determines how the expenses of the major maintenance projects, emergencies, or special projects will be paid for. Lack of reserves means that the association would have to charge a special assessment to every unit owner for any significant expense not budgeted for. The charge will be a prorated amount of the project's total cost. It's preferable to have a reserve fund, but many associations either don't have one or choose not to fund it. In Florida, unit owners of condominiums of all sizes used to be able to vote on whether to fund the association's reserves during an annual budget meeting. However, following the dreadful collapse of the luxury high-rise building called Champlain Towers South in Surfside, Florida in June 2021, the Florida Congress implemented the Building Safety Act. This law made broad changes in how condo associations with buildings of 3 stories or more must deal with maintenance and upkeep, including mandatory funding of the reserve fund. I had anticipated that the importance of reserve funding would eventually be recognized, yet it's disheartening that it took a major catastrophe like the Champlain Towers incident to bring about this change. One might assume that luxury high-rise condos, often owned by wealthy individuals, would have no issue with funding reserves. However, some condo owners, particularly investors, don't see the need for fully funded reserves in luxury high-rises. They believe that wealthy individuals can easily afford to pay special assessments. Nevertheless, a well-funded reserve is critical to any condominium that is more than 20 years old, particularly if it's a building which is affordable to the working and middle class, for obvious reasons. By the way, if the association has a reserve, ask if it's fully funded. It's possible that the association might list the reserve on the books, yet have a minimal or no cash in the bank. Ideally, be sure to examine the financials to ensure that the reserve fund is fully funded. Ask, are there any capital improvements planned for the near term? And if so, how will they be paid for? The answer to this question becomes especially important when the association lacks a reserve. Ask, what are the major architectural restrictions and how long does the approval process take? If you're buying a unit that requires remodeling or improvements, it's essential to know this information in advance. Some condominium associations require you to wait up to 30 days to get an architectural modification request approved. Most associations require you to provide copies of the building permits, plans, and a copy of the remodeling contract before receiving the board's approval. And yes, all condo associations require written board approval for any changes or improvements to a unit. That's one of those universal rules and requirements. Ask, what are the parking restrictions? This question often gets overlooked by prospective buyers and inexperienced real estate agents when visiting the property. If you own a vehicle that could be considered a commercial vehicle or own multiple cars, ensure that you know these parking restrictions as soon as possible. There are varying degrees of parking restrictions among the condo associations I've encountered. Some associations enforce their parking rules and regulations strictly, while others are somewhat lax in comparison. For example, one common restriction is the parking of commercial vehicles. However, vans and pickup trucks can serve as both a commercial and passenger vehicles, but some associations won't allow unit owners with these types of vehicles to park within the community regardless of its use. Ask, what is the renter to owner ratio? This is another vital question to ask, especially if you're financing the purchase of your condo as your primary home. Banks will want to know the total number of units in the association and how many are rented before approving a mortgage. This ratio is important because rental properties are considered investment properties. Their owners are more likely to default on their obligations during times of financial trouble compared to those who own their primary residence. Ask, are there any rental restrictions? This question is equally important if you're buying your condo as an investment or a primary residence. Consider an association I managed that had a 3-year rental restriction. A married couple bought a unit to make their home. Sadly, a year later, the husband passed away. The wife had to sell the unit shortly thereafter because she couldn't afford the property on her own and she couldn't rent it out due to the 3-year minimum ownership requirement. So it's important to know about the rental restrictions in advance, even if you plan on being an owner-occupant. Here are a few questions to ask. How many board members are there? As you may know, the association's bylaws determine the number of board members, which usually depends on the number of units in the community or building. It's important to be aware of the size of the condo association's board. In my experience, dealing with larger boards can often result in more bureaucratic hurdles when dealing with the association, both on the pre- and post-ownership. In terms of size of the board, I prefer effectiveness over quantity. In my opinion, a board consisting of 3 to 5 competent members should sufficiently manage up to about 350 units, and a 7 to 9 member would be ideal for managing 350 or more units, provided the members are highly capable. As a case in point, I once managed an association with 21 board members. Needless to say, it made for an interesting experience. How active is the board? In other words, how often do they meet and where? Generally, the more active the board, the better, because the official business of the association gets done at board meetings. I always recommend going to at least one board meeting to see the board in action. Ask, does the board have committees? Committees are established to assist the board in its decision-making process. Therefore, having committees is a good thing because it shows that other owners, besides the board members, are willing to assist the board and management in running the association. In other words, committees typically facilitate transactions and processes. Before we move on to the next session, I want to highlight an essential aspect: board members' tenure. The duration of a board member's term in office can provide valuable insights into the functioning of the board and the identification of key players. It can become problematic when one or more board members seem to perpetually remain on the board. Long-standing members who assume an authoritarian role are often humorously referred to as condo commandos. You can find out the term of office of a board member by visiting your state's Department of Corporations website and checking the association's corporation annual filing report. The names of the association's board members are updated annually. In the case of Florida, visit www.sunbiz.org and search for the name of the condo association. Ask how the association is managed. Is it self-managed or is it managed by a professional management company? There are pros and cons to each. Let's start with the pros and cons of self-management. Pros: the management office is on site, the property manager is an employee of the association, and the association has complete control over the day-to-day operation of the community. The cons are that self-management relies heavily on active, competent, and knowledgeable board members. It also requires qualified and experienced property managers and can often encounter staffing issues. If a professional management company manages the association, the pros include full back office support, experienced management, and staffing resources when necessary. The cons are that there could be a high turnover of condo managers, which can adversely affect the unit owner's service in the form of delayed response times. Note that the location of the management office is not an issue, but it can affect the services provided to owners and residents. For example, an association with an on-site office can provide more immediate and efficient services compared to an association that has a management office located elsewhere. When the management office is located elsewhere, it is obvious that the ability of management to provide its services will be somewhat limited. Ask how long the current manager has been working with the association. And how long was the previous manager with the association? This information will give you an idea of the management turnover rate. Frequent management turnover, such as every 1 or 2 years, is never a good sign, regardless of the circumstances. It's a clear sign that there are internal problems within the administration which disrupts the operation of the building and the association as a whole. That is to say, it adversely affects the day-to-day services to the owners and residents. The easiest way to find out this information is by asking the management directly. Ask who enforces the bylaws and rules and regulations, and how are they enforced. It's always best for the condo manager, as a licensed community association manager, to be in charge or responsible for enforcing the rules and regulations. They are required by law to know the condo law, including what can and can't be enforced, and the procedure to go about it. It's common to find that board members become a little overzealous in enforcing the association's rules and regulations in ways which often conflict with the state's condo laws. Many forget that state condo laws supersede the association's rules and regulations. Ask if there's a fining committee. If board members take it upon themselves to enforce the rules and regulations, it becomes vital to know the answer to this question. Without a fining committee, board members will be a judge and jury in situations where there may be an alleged violation of the association's rules and regulations. Believe me, that's too much power for board members to have over your personal property. And finally, ask, are the maintenance staff employees of the association or subcontracted? The answer to this question will shed some light on the responsiveness of the cleaning and maintenance staff when you need them. Management will have more control over the employed staff than the subcontracted staff regarding not only the response time, but also their effectiveness in doing their jobs. As we conclude this tutorial, I want to reiterate what I said in the introduction. During the purchase process, it's crucial to pay attention to potential red flags before making an offer or buying a condo. Failing to check under the condo hood is a common mistake made by many buyers, especially first-time homeowners. When you're at the property, ensure that you inspect as much of the outside of the unit as you do the inside. As I mentioned in my Buying a Condo Like a Pro video, there's a lot you can do about a problem or a condition within a unit that you're considering buying. However, there's nothing you can do about a problem or condition occurring in the exterior of that unit, unless, of course, you become president of the association shortly after buying the unit. Additionally, remember that buying a condo means you're also buying a percentage of all the other condominium common areas, amenities, and everything else related to the condo building or community, whether it's good, bad, or ugly. I shared a lot of information and provided you with a list of questions you can ask during the evaluation process. However, remember what I said in the intro. Each condominium purchase represents a unique scenario. The insights and questions I present are not all encompassing, but are meant to serve as a starting point. And the issues I touch upon are not always deal breakers. They might have possible solutions or mitigating factors that can address or alleviate them. However, if the issues are present in the condominium community you're considering, understanding their implications prior to commitment is crucial. This understanding empowers you to make a well-informed decision, ensuring the condominium community suits your needs and the potential issues are manageable or resolvable. Well, that concludes our tutorial on the red flags to look for when buying a condo. I hope you've enjoyed the video and found the information both useful and interesting. If you did, before you go, please click the like button and subscribe and send a link to a friend or a relative. And don't hesitate to drop me an email if you have any questions. I'll be more than happy to respond. Thank you for watching. God bless.